Hi, everybody. I'm Jason Mefford, and I'm here with Brad Miller. And today we are walking a spiritual path again on this podcast. Well, on the podcast and in real life too. All right, there we go.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, and today we thought it would be kind of fun. We always record these several weeks in advance. So we're recording this in advance of the start of the spiritual campfire, but it's probably already started by the time that you are listening to this, which is a new kind of monthly gathering for what we're calling spiritual hikers. So people who are like us, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like us too, and you're walking or hiking a spiritual path. And so we wanted to come up with kind of a monthly way for people to sit around the campfire and share experiences, ask questions, kind of make it more interactive than we can do on the podcast here. And so we thought it would be fun because we're leaning into this from an intuitive standpoint, which again, remember, Brad's a lawyer, I'm a CPA, right? So we're our tendency is to do everything with our head and do it kind of from a business standpoint. But we're really leaning into doing this more intuitively. And so we thought it would be fun to kind of share a little bit of the backstory or the things that have been going on for us, right, leading up to this, so you can again kind of understand how we're leaning more into our intuition in the things that we're doing. This in particular, but I know at least for me too, I'm leaning more into that from my business's perspective as well, right? So Brad, I know you kind of collected some thoughts here, so you want to kind of get us started and
So, I know this is something that you have kind of had on in the back of your head and pushed back. Um,
almost
for
almost 3 years.
yeah. But for me, this was not something that I'd really thought about. This is not something that was in the back of my head. This was not an idea that had really come to me. Um, and so how did it come to mind? So, the past, I don't know, month or two, I've started to feel some urges to do more. Now, obviously, Jason and I do this podcast weekly, and this is a great opportunity for us to kind of talk about these topics. But I felt like there was something more that I needed to do with this. Like, this is a one-on-one kind of conversation. And so for you listening, you just kind of get to sit in, but there's no interaction. There's no place for you to kind of talk about your experiences or things like that. And so something in my head said, hey, we need to figure out a way that we can make this a bigger thing. We can help serve more people with it. Whatever this might be. What that was, I had no idea. And so I kind of just sat with this kind of rumbling in my head of like, we need to do more. I'm like, what does that mean? We need to do more. What does that mean? And what it was about 2 months ago, I guess, I had an energy clearing session. And I came out of that session knowing that I needed to do something more. So to know what it was, but it
Mhm.
was very clear to me at that point that yes, I need to do something with this. That there was something else I needed to be doing, focusing, running. I didn't know what it was. Just there needed to be something more than what we had been doing. So I sat with it, and it didn't take long after that in my head popped the idea of a group discussion, let's call it.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't know if that's what it needs to be. So I messaged Jason. I was like, so I had this kind of idea pop in my head. How does it feel to you? Because I didn't have a strong pull one way or the other with it. I didn't have like, oh my God, this is the thing. This is what I need to do. But it was still something that was there and kind of stuck with me. So threw out to Jason. What are your thoughts on it? And the response was, well, let's talk about it. You know, so we kind of put off until the next recording session, and we talked about it. What would this be like? Is this something that makes sense to do? And again, for me, it was coming from this just popped in my head. I didn't have any connection to it. I didn't have any strong feelings behind it. And so I was kind of leaning on Jason to kind of give me a little bit of guidance on if this was something that we should do.
Jason was dragging his feet a little bit, and maybe I'll tell you why here. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, and so we had a couple of conversations, and kind of after the second, we're like, yeah, I think this is what we need to be doing. I sat for a while, and for me, I know that there's some things that jump up right away and say, jump out at me like this is what you have to do. And I know that if that happens, I should probably follow that. That's some sort of a sign, some sort of intuitive hit, whatever. But if something pops up like that, and I have a strong, it's not really a feeling because it's not an emotional reaction or emotional kind of thing, but just a draw, something like I just feel really drawn to it. Kind of like, yes, this is what I have to do. Those are kind of easy when I pop up. Okay, yep, I got to do that. But this wasn't one of those, and I've starting to get better that when I have something like that, I know that I personally need to sit with it and see how it fits, see how it feels. I have to let myself go through the emotions, see this. Hey, does this feel good? Does this feel kind of neutral? Does this feel like just a passing thing? Like if it sticks around in my head and it still is there and percolating, then to me that tells me there's probably something there. And this is something that I've had to learn about myself. And for those of you who are human design nerds out there, I am an emotional as my decision making type, so I have to sit with things and let the emotions kind of ride to see, is this just oh, this has a great idea urge, and then okay, not stupid, or is this like a real thing? And so I sat with it, and it still hung around throughout the conversation with Jason, and I was like, yep, this is still there. This still seemed like a thing. And then Jason was like, yep, we probably need to do this. And so we did.
Hmm. Well, and it's kind of interesting, because again, so Brad kind of, shared the logistics of the whole thing and, of how it kind of unfolded for him. And for me, really, it's, there were some pivotal things that happened in my life about 3 or 4 years ago where I really jumped into the deep end of the pool from a spiritual standpoint. Okay. And, at that time, I mean, I've had several businesses that I run that I've been doing for a long time. And, once I jumped into the deep end of the pool, I kind of felt like that too, like a pull, like I want to share more. I want to help more people who are going through kind of what I'm doing as well, right?
Mhm.
But but I didn't know what that looked like. And so same thing, I had to kind of sit with it. I didn't get anything definitive in my head. And there was a part of me holding myself back too. And even when Brad sent me that text, my first thought was, shit, I'm going to have to address this. I've been sitting on this for years, and now,
Hopefully it'll
it
go
feels
away, and
like
it
we're going to have,
didn't.
it's not going away, right? And so, for Brad, it was, he kept kind of getting these phrases, do more, group discussion, right? And well, what does that mean? Right. And again, a lot of times when we get these intuitive hits, when we have things in dreams, sometimes there's a word or a short phrase is all that we get. And then we have to sit with it and figure out what that means. Right. And so for me too, I felt this desire um, to do more, but I also was holding myself back because I see so many people who start down a path like this, and all of a sudden they use it to make money. And I never wanted anything from the spiritual side to do something for the money, right? Because part of me was like, well, do I need to just get rid of my other businesses and do something completely new? And I don't know, I might still, but at least for now, I haven't gotten a definitive hit that way, right? But I also knew that in our society that we live today, it's different than in the ancient traditions, right? And so, as we talked about the spiritual campfire, we're like, well, we got to charge something, right? Which again, I said I don't want to make money at it. I don't want to do it for the money, but yet there has to be an exchange of I need. And so I want to kind of explain that a little bit because and why, what I've been reconciling in myself as well, based on how our society and economics work now versus how they did, in ancient times. And so I'm just gonna, let's pretend for a minute that we're, 200 years ago, and we're maybe in a Native American ancient tradition kind of a setting. And, the elders or group of people would come together and would create a campfire or a ceremony and would invite people, or people would come to the campfire. Now, when you go to see the elders, you would never come empty-handed, right? There was the understanding in pretty much all ancient traditions that you do not go to the master, the don, the guru, the elder, whatever term is being used. You don't show up someplace empty-handed. And it's even in a lot of cultures, my partner's Russian, and it's a big deal. If you go over to someone's house, you do not show up empty-handed. If they invite you over, you do not show up empty-handed. You offer some kind of a gift, right, for the hospitality of them inviting you over. And so it was the same way, back then. People who would come to the ceremonies or sit around the campfire with the elders, they would bring things for the elders. They would provide an offering to them for, whatever, and whatever was from their heart, right? And so, it you know, for each person, it was different, right? And, unfortunately, in today's society with virtual and computers and fiat currencies, a lot of those options aren't really there like they used to be, right? Is and so that's why again we are asking that the membership is kind of acts like INI, but you use fiat currency, you use your credit card, to pay for it, if you will, because you can't virtually show up and hand, Brad a thing of tea and me a thing of coffee or whatever, right? Like you would if we were actually meeting physically in person. And for me, it's kind of been hard to do that because a lot of my life uh I've just done a lot of stuff for free. Literally, I have uh probably millions of dollars worth of my time, right? Which shows how good of a businessman I am. Of me donating my time and wanting to help all of the orphan children and stray dogs, if you will, that are out there. Anybody who wants to spend time with me, I would fill up my calendar serving them, but those people would never bring anything to me. They would just suck energy from me, suck time from me, and then not reciprocate, right? Or I'd help them solve a problem and they'd say thanks and walk away, right? And what really has become clear for me the last 3 or 4 years as well is I've been told I can't do things for free. Ooh, right? Which is, again, hard for me because here I am, a bleeding heart. I want to help everybody, but it's like you can't do it for free, right?
Mhm.
And so even when, Again, people reach out on LinkedIn. And I had somebody it was last Friday. I got a message. Do you have some time? I have a question for you. I need some answers. And I'm like, well, here's a link to my, half hour discounted rate because I have my normal rate and then I have my discounted rate and sent off to the person. And they're like, and first response back is, you don't have any time today? And it's like, I'm booked up today. I have time next week, right? Then they click
What's
on
my
the link.
calendar say, right?
Yeah,
Like,
what's my calendar say? That's what's open. And then they came back and, oh, I can't afford that. And it's like, well, then I can't afford to give you an answer, to your question. If you're not willing, if your question isn't important enough, for 50 or $100, then you don't really want the question answered, right? Because again, like I said, it was a discounted rate. It wasn't like, my normal billing rate. But it just shows, again, how in society we have forgotten some of those ancient ways. The idea or the concept of tithing that is in so many religions, that's an ancient tradition, right? It's a reciprocity and a way of balancing the energies. Now I know a lot of religions dogmatically make it, you're going to hell if you don't give me your tithing, that sort of thing. So they took an ancient tradition that is sacred and, have kind of twisted it, distorted it. But, the reality is I would love to do this for free, but we're not allowed to do it for free. And people wouldn't get the benefit out of it if they do it for free.
yeah.
Right? Because if someone does not uh put forth some sort of a sacrifice in the form of ini and time and money and in gift in something, then you don't deserve what you're being given. And so either you won't receive it or you'll have a karmic debt to pay, right? And so what that means, for example, is like all the people who, reach out and want free advice. Well, guess what? They typically don't follow the advice.
Mhm.
Why? Because there's been no balance of energy, right? And so because of that, they don't actually follow it. Or the people who do follow the advice and then make a whole bunch of money off of it, let's say, and are not grateful and maybe share, back and say, hey, Jason, thank you for that idea. I just made $1 million. Can I send you 100,000 or can I send you 5,000 or whatever? I really appreciate you doing that. That's the way the old way was done, right? But we're just not into the habit of doing that because everything is we go into the store, we pull out our credit card, we buy it on Amazon, click, 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 sort of thing. And we've really kind of forgotten that side of the ancient ways that we need to, start doing better about. Um, so anyway, that went kind of around around a bit, didn't it?
And around it went, and
But I
no,
but I
but
think it's, because again, it's for me, it's been hard to charge for it, and yet at the same point I'm being told that we have to, and I understand why, and it's a lesson that I am learning and having to work through myself as well.
yeah, well, it's the whole concept of Viney,
Mhm.
and it sounds like that one of the things that you have, one of your lessons is receiving, that you're a
Mhm.
giver, which is great, but you have to receive, because if you don't fill up the ATM machine, at some point the ATM machine is going to run out of cash,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
So you need
Exactly.
something to keep that flowing. And so think of it from the energy standpoint. If you don't get that energy received from the people who are, getting it, your advice, your time and things like that, you're not able to replenish the energy to then be able to help more people. And then you get
Mhm.
burnt out, you get all the bad things that, you know, or whatever. So that's a good lesson for those that are kind of listening. And And to me, the other side of requiring some sort of a commitment, a financial commitment, is just if you don't give something, you're not going to appreciate it.
Mhm.
I mean, think of all the free courses out there that you've signed up for and you've never done anything with. Like I've got a folder, a couple folders actually on my computer of videos and things like that, free courses that people have offered. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And signed up and maybe I saved the video or something and the materials, and I've never gone through it. I've never read it. I never watched a video. It's just sitting on my computer. Why? Because it didn't cost me anything. So I didn't feel that I mean, it's really that reciprocation thing where I put the money in, so I really need to get my money's worth. I don't feel that with most things. And so we wanted to make sure that this was something that you would feel a commitment to, that you would say, this is important to me to be showing up for, to be able to be present for, not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally as well. And the way to do that is by requiring like you said, because that's kind of how the world works nowadays, some sort of a financial contribution to help do that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's funny because as you were saying that too, it reminded me of a story too. When I was in high school, I was almost a straight A student. I think it was 3.9 or something like that. I got a few B's in high school. And so when I went off to my freshman year of college, um, lucky for me, my parents supported me in that, right? So my tuition was paid for. They paid for my housing, and they even gave me a little bit of an allowance each month to buy groceries. Now this was a while ago, but I think it was $150 a month, if I remember right, to buy food. So I had to learn how to kind of budget and do some stuff with that. But in essence, right, my parents, had paid for my tuition, they paid for my apartment, and were giving me an allowance for food. And then I still got a little part-time job. I was a psychology lab rat, so they would run experiments on me, and maybe someday I'll tell stories about
spiders
that.
and fun things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, right. Explains a little bit more about Jason, right? Electroshock therapy. No, anyway, but what's interesting, right? So it was kind of covered. It was great, right? So I didn't have to worry about working. I mean, because I've been working since I was 8 years old. 8 years old, I'd been making money for myself, and was pretty much self-sufficient. All my clothes and food that I ate outside of the house and entertainment since I was about 14, I was paying for myself, right? But then I get to college and it's great. My parents, it was lovely. And so what did I do? Well, I had a lot of free time on my hands. So I played the guitar and I dated girls, and I don't even know what I did. But I went from a 4.0 student to a solid 3.0 my first year at college, right? So, you know, what was the difference? Well, I wasn't really paying for it anymore like I was before, right? And then again, you kind of flash forward. So I had my freshman year, then I went off and did a Mormon mission for a couple of years. I came back. Now, guess who had to pay for college, right? And I got married early, right? So here I had a small family and I was working pretty much a full-time job, and I was paying for my own university, right? The last 3 years. What do you think happened to my grades? Went back to a 4.0, right? Okay, I got one B. Mike Mers gave me a B.
How dare
You
they?
know, he only was going to give one A in that class, and it wasn't me. And he decided that after the first exam who that person was going to be, and the rest of us got B's. But anyway, right? It kind of makes the point again that when you pay attention, right? When you're investing in yourself, when there's that balance, right? Then things just end up being different for you.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah.
So some other lessons that I learned through this process. We Until that last call when we finally said, "Yep, we're going to do this." We didn't really have a name for
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
Um, Kind of a name kind of came to me and I kind of threw out. But I wasn't really attached to it. Um, it was just something that kind of popped in my head. And again, just like the idea to do this in the first place, I kind of threw it out there. Jason was like, "Hey, what about this?" And Jason got to sit with it a little bit himself and be like, and so we made some changes to it.
Hmm.
And I was like, he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if I like the energy behind that." And so I sat
Well,
down somewhere and
yeah, because to me, what's interesting, and again, this is kind of a lesson, right, of what we're both of us have learned through this,
Mhm.
right? I was kind of relying on you to, fill in some of the blanks because again, I was maybe a little
resisting.
unsure of myself, but I was resisting. I was probably resisting more than I was unsure, right?
Mhm.
And so when you threw out the first name, it's like, oh, I like the imagery behind it, but there's something about this one word. I just that word does not kind of fit the energy.
Mhm.
What about these other words, right? So I kind of went back to
Like a
Brad
list of like
with,
10 of them,
yeah,
essentially.
here's some synonyms. Do you like any of these words better? And uh, and then all of a sudden Brad comes back with a completely new one.
It
It wasn't completely new because it
wasn't
was it
completely
was the
new.
same theme. It
Yeah.
was the same kind of theme and metaphor, but it was completely new and he just threw it out. And the minute that I read the text, it was like, boom, yep, done. That's it. And again, it's, is it if we went to a marketing person and tried to, do some analysis and come up with a fancy schmancy name that's going to sell well, is that the word? Are those the words that we should use? Probably not, but it doesn't matter because again, we're trying to do this intuitively. And
Mhm.
so when we get the hit and Brad got that term, and then when I saw it, I got the confirmation of it too. It's like, well, I guess we go with it, right?
Yeah. And what was it's yeah, and so we came up with that and it was like, all right, there it is. But the another really important thing for me that I've kind of known in the back of my head, but I don't know if I was just kind of hesitant about it or what. So I tend to be an idea person. I'm a general thinker. I can get stuck in the weeds and I get lost in there. And then I was like, this is stupid. And I never finish when I start something. When I came up with the idea, and when Jason and I talked about this, I'm like, okay, so here's what I had. Just like, well, that I can do, I've got this already set up. I can do this and this and this, and kind of checked off all the different things that can be done. He's like, yep, not a problem. It'll be done. I'll have it done here in a couple of days. And I was like, awesome, because I would never have gotten this thing done if any of those were on my plate. Like I am not the doer. I'm
Mhm.
not the person that is the one that you want to rely on to get the stuff done. Like I will come up with the ideas, hence everything we talked about today, this podcast. I mean, I come up with the ideas, but when it comes to execution, no, gonna fall flat on it. Which is why it's really important for me as I'm learning, and it has really hit me in the last week or so to find someone to partner with, to work with that is that person
Mhm.
that can get shit done, that can take the ideas and say, okay, yep, that's doable. Here we go. We just need this and this and this, and here it is. Because otherwise, I have so many ideas that are essentially on the cutting room floor because I've not done anything with them. And they're
Well,
just sitting there dying.
yeah, and to me, what's kind of funny because about me, from a human design perspective, I'm a generator, and so yeah, I can get shit
You're a
done.
doer.
But what's interesting is I'm a complex person too, right? So I have all these ideas and questions and other things that are out there. But what my I guess kind of, where one of my shadows is I have these thoughts and ideas and things that should happen, but I'm years ahead of what's actually practical.
Mm,
Right. And so, I have kind of these visions or ideas of creating certain things, but it's not time yet. But when somebody, when I decide on something, I might sit for something, like I said, for 3 years.
mhm,
When I decide to go, I go. And it's done before people know. So I have to be, very careful with people, especially, partners. It's like, don't ask me to do something
mhm.
unless you want it done, because it's going to be done. And if you change your mind, it's too
Too
late.
late. Yeah.
It's too late, right? Because, I grab it and I go. And again, what was kind of interesting is, kind of what we've created here. Um, 5 years ago, it would have taken me a lot longer to do all this stuff, but it's very similar to some other businesses that I have. And so I already had all the infrastructure. I already knew how to do everything. All the stuff was already paid for, no incremental, cost that way, just my time of setting everything up and kind of, monitoring and doing the administrative stuff. So yeah, and I told them a couple days, it was really an afternoon, which is different too than most new products or courses or other things that I've done, where I mean, I remember, kind of agonizing over some websites and tweaking here and tweaking there and
Mhm.
doing this and for 3 weeks,
Yep.
right? And this one is like, nope, it's going to be simple. Boom, 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 boom. Brad, here you go. Okay, I like this, only, maybe change this. I don't like, that's still maybe, the old marketing that you and I are trying to get rid of, right? That we're taught that we're supposed to do. It's like
Mhm,
that doesn't quite have the right energy. Okay, well, how about if we say this, right?
mhm,
And literally a couple of emails back and forth, uh, and it was done. Right. I mean, even from Brad's comments, it maybe took me 20 or 30 minutes to make any of the changes, and it's done, ready to go.
mhm,
Um, and again, it's part of it was kind of, me experiencing and knowing how to do some of these things to prepare for it to be so easy for me now. And I think that's another thing too, right? Is that Brad and I are the same, but we're different.
mhm,
And so because of that, we can rely on each other's strengths,
mhm.
uh, to be able to, do more than we could do just by ourselves as well. Which again is another lesson. It doesn't mean that the way I do it or the way that Brad does it is right or wrong. It's just the way it is. And that's why I even told you I knew I was resisting. I knew my tonal was resisting. That's why I kind of kicked it over to Brad and said, Brad, tell me what you think we need to do. Right. And because I knew that I would be trying to resist or want to kind of overplay it in my mind,
Mhm.
for me, it was easier to have him lob something to me and me either to get confirmation, at that point, or to say, something's not quite right with this. Right. And lob it back.
Mhm.
And it was the same thing with the website, right? I just we kind of had an idea of what we wanted. I did like a little outline, and then
Mhm.
Brad looked at it and it's like, well, I do the wording a little bit different here. Why don't we add this? We should probably make sure and mention that, right? And we
Mhm.
want to be very explicit because we don't want anybody to be surprised or pissed off, right? And boom, 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 back and forth, and it was
Mhm.
easier.
And I think the biggest delay on the website was just the fact that we're in different time zones. So at some point I was in bed while you were working on stuff. So
Well,
you had to wait till I
I did
woke up the
that.
next day.
But see, that's the generator in me, right? I knew that you wouldn't get to it until the morning, but I knew that when I finished it at night, you would probably look at it because we're 3 hours different, right? So
Mhm.
Brad would probably look at it in the morning. So when I got in and was ready to work, I'd already have what I needed. Boom, it was done, right?
Mhm.
So that was done on purpose, but that's just.
No, no, I figured as much. Like, I mean, and ultimately, a lot of the stuff I came, and this is, maybe something we kind of, I know we don't want to get this too long, so wrap up here, but a lot of the stuff, the ideas, the concepts, the names, things like that, came while I was sitting on my back porch in front of a fire.
Mhm.
I sent you a picture.
Hmm. Yeah, you had your piece of paper sitting there on the fire. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was sitting there coming up with the ideas for what we wanted to do for, I think it was the one of the videos or something. And I would just come and sit out there in the silence, and with the fire going, and that's where a lot of stuff was happening and coming.
Yeah, and I think that's the, part of the imagery and everything of what we're attempting to do here, or what we're creating. We're not attempting to do it, we've created it. Right now it's just if people want to come or not, or if it's just Brad and me hanging out at the fire. It's just fine either way.
I'll bring the marshmallows.
Yeah, you bring the marshmallows and yeah, but what's interesting is it's a modern day twist on the ancient ways,
Mhm.
right? And the fact is, because we're throughout the world and we have this beautiful blessing of technology like we have, so that everybody doesn't have to travel hundreds or thousands of miles to come together. We can actually do some things virtually. But there's power in campfires. There's power in the fire, in the transformation of the wood into the fire in the air. The circle of the campfire circle and the sacred geometry of the circle and what it represents, and people sitting around the campfire together, right? And so that's what we wanted to be like. It's like we're showing up to Brad's deck and sitting around the fire on his deck, or we're showing up, with me in the mountains somewhere, around a campfire in the mountains. I mean, that's the idea, but being able to do it virtually, because I know I can't remember when I said it and whatever, but a lot of my fondest memories growing up were around the campfire, either as a Boy Scout or at our family cabin in the mountains. And so for me, there's a lot of uh, tie in with that, which is one of the reasons why I love kind of this metaphor, um, to go along with it. And hey, I'm a fire sign too, right? So I have a very deep connection with fire itself, which is one of the reasons that I love it so much.
Well, with that, we will step out from behind the curtain and thank you guys for listening today. Again, hopefully you found, well, again, this is our experience of putting this thing together, which literally came together in like 2, 3 weeks. Like
Mhm.
that's how fast this was. That's how I don't necessarily say guided, but that's just how it just, it was something that we could tell was needed to happen, and we just kind of followed the flow. We didn't try not to resist. Jason got past that resistance thing of his, um and we just kind of jumped in and just kind of let it ride where it takes us. And like I said, as you listen to this episode, we've already had one campfire at this point, at least one, depending on when you listen to it. And if this sounds like something that you think you would like to experience, be a part of, um we invite you to join us. I think we've got information, a link in the show notes. So check us out. And again, we'd love to have you if it's something that speaks to you.
Yep. Yep. And again, we hope that you found this, informative as well, because like I said, we just want to share more of our experiences, because that's really all that we can do, is just kind of share the learnings that we've had, and hope that they, help you as well. And that's really kind of the whole campfire too, is so you can actually share as well as just us sharing, and we can hear from you, we can witness you, we can hold that container space so that we can have, that sacred sharing with each other.
Yeah, cool. So again, thank you guys for listening. Have a great week, and we will catch you on the next episode.
All right, see you,
See you
everybody.
guys then.